Coming up, we're going to be talking about how to start choosing who you are over who others want you to be. What's up, y'all? My name is Josh, and I'm so excited to be hanging out with y'all today on the Crazy Good Talk podcast. Now, my goal for this talk here today is to help you to start choosing who you are over who others want you to be. All right, so if it's your first time here listening or watching, I just want to say we're excited to have you here. If you've been tracking with us for a little bit, we're excited to have you back on the talks. Now, let me give you a rundown of what's about to happen next. All right, so this right here is the welcome. This is where I get to set us up and talk about what we're about to get into for today. Next, we're gonna get into the talks. All right, this is the portion of the conversation where we kind of go deep. All right, and then I'm gonna leave you with a question that will challenge you at the end of this video, and I want you to not just listen but to apply what it is that you're hearing. So drop a comment in the comment section answering that question so we can hear and go and do together. All right, so as we get started, here is what we are talking about today. Today we're talking about the me others want me to be. The me others want me to be. So today we're talking about choosing who you are over choosing who others want you to be. And here is why this is important. Here is why this matters, right? It matters because I see so many young adults opting in to the person that other people want them to be, right? I see so many young adults opting in, whether that's from the school that they choose to go to, from the career that they choose to do, from the job that they're choosing. They are thinking about what others want them to be before they're actually considering themselves, right? And I feel like it is a simple practice. There are simple things that we could be doing to not fall into that trap, right? But before we talk about that, let's talk about why young adults should prioritize figuring this out. Let's talk about why this is so important to figure out. And to talk about this, I want to set you all up with a story about why this is so important to figure out. Now, I remember when I was getting into high school, right? And I remember I wanted to spend, my number one priority was the ability to be able to spend as much time with my friends as I can. That was the most important thing to me. I was going from middle school to high school, freshman year, and I wanted to know, what do I have to do to make sure that I can maximize the amount of time spent with my friends, all right? So I'm racking my brain. I'm thinking about what can I do? Maybe I could take the same classes as them. Maybe I can, maybe we can, who's riding the bus together with me? Who has the same classes as me? Who has different electives? Who has the same gym time? I'm trying to figure out all of the ways that I can do that. And then I realized something. I said, oh, a lot of my friends play sports. And they actually play, most of my friends, it's about to be fall, and they're about to play football. So, man, if I can schedule myself to play football, I will be in and amongst my friends and just be able to hang out with them so that I can be there with them. Now, here was the reality. The reality is a lot of my friends had already been playing football for a long time, all right? So they grew up kind of playing what they call Pop Warner ball, right? So they grew up playing football. I had no idea about football. This was something new I was learning. I didn't even know if I was actually that interested in it, right? But football was not going to keep me from being in and amongst my friends, I thought, right? So football, I got there. We did Hell Week where we got to go through everything. And then if you made it past that, you can start playing and we get to practicing. And here's the thing about football. there is a lot of strength and conditioning. There's a lot of running, right? So there's a lot of practices. There are practices that happen after school that you must attend. Let me tell you something else, all right? Before the fall comes, because school kicks back off in September, end of August, September. If you know anything, that is towards the end of the summer. But during the summer, still, we're out there and we are practicing, right? The sun is out, it's hot, you're sweating, you got pads on, helmet on, you're doing all these things, you're sweating, you're running hills. We used to have to do this thing where we run hills, run up and down and up and down. And there was just a lot of different things that went wrong with football for me personally, because there was the practicing, which I got that. That was cool. I can kind of make my way through that. But then also it was you have to keep your grades up above a certain level to be able to play, right? And then if it wasn't bad enough to be able to play in the sun when it was hot, I could do that. I can tolerate that at some point. But then you had to play when it was cold. The fall came. It was raining. It's wet. It's cold outside. I had a problem. And you see, here was the problem. I wanted to hang out with my friends, but this thing of football, this reality of this sports thing right here, it was not actually for me, right? It was not actually for me, right? And I wound up very quickly, as the fall came and the weather got cold, I wound up finding something else. I found another way to be able to spend more time with my friends, whether it was through lunch, whether it was through whatever. I found another way, but that specific way was just not working for me. Now, what is the lesson that I want to kind of take out of that? I learned that, man, if we aren't careful choosing to be what others want us to be, will increase our stress, right? I was now not just worrying about football. I was worrying about how to get to practice, getting a ride home from practice. Like I said, all of the running and the conditioning. Then it was, you got to play in the hot. Then you got to play in the cold. Then you got to keep your grades up. All of those things where I'm like trying to juggle for the first time and trying to learn how to play the sport these kids have been playing years before I started playing. And it just felt so overwhelming. It just felt like so much. Like, here I am trying to do this, I'm trying to do that, I'm trying to do this, and I don't even really love this thing. I may like it just enough to hang out with my friends, but I don't like it past when things get hard, right? So what I learned was, again, if we aren't careful choosing to be what others want us to be is going to increase our stress. You see, those of my friends that were already in that football world, they had the energy to do it because they liked it. They had been doing it for years, right? Maybe they had sharpened the skills over time to get better and better, and they were more suited for it. But the simple things for them, or the things that may have been frustrating for me, were not frustrating for them because they loved the thing way more than I loved the thing, right? So we got to be careful to the amount of stress that we bring ourselves when we're choosing to opt into what others want us to be. Now, you might get some extra friends, right? But this will actually hurt you in the long term if you don't do it the right way. So how should we handle this instead? Well, I could have handled this and just been honest with where I was at. I could have sat there and assessed what it was and realized, like, hey, man, I'm starting freshman year, high school, trying to figure out that course load of work. I've never played football before. Maybe there are some things that I need to consider here, right? Maybe I just needed to be honest with my reality and honest with what I was able to accomplish, right? And by being honest, I should now be able to go over by being honest, you should now be able to see who you are and choose who you are over who others want you to be. Now, that's one reason, but there's another reason even more important than the stress that it may add to your life. for why you should be prioritizing choosing who you are rather than the who others want you to be, right? So, have you ever finally bought something? I want to ask you a question. I want to go here real quick. Have you ever finally wanted something so bad, right? Been waiting for it, wishing for it, hoping for it, saving for it, and then you finally bought that thing that you wanted, and then you realize, oh my gosh, I actually don't even want this, or you don't even use it as much as you thought you would, or you don't even it doesn't make its way in your everyday life like you thought that it would, right? I remember when I was graduating, graduation day for high school, right? I remember getting all the way through high school and graduating, right? And I remember thinking like, man, this is going to be the best day of my life. And here's why it was going to be the best day of my life. The problem I ran into as I navigated high school is I fell way behind freshman year. So freshman year, because I was out there trying to figure out football and just hanging out with friends and doing all those things, you're supposed to graduate your freshman year with 25 credits, right? At the end of semester 2, you should have 25 credits to move on to the next grade. I graduated freshman year. I don't know if you can even say it was graduating. I left freshman year with 7.25 credits. We're going to let that sit. I know it was not great. 7.25 credits. And here's the thing. From that moment on, everyone doubted that I would ever graduate with my graduating class. Whether it was my guidance counselors, whether it was my parents, whether whoever it was, nobody thought that I was actually going to be able to make up the credits to be able to graduate on time. So think of graduation. I'm thinking this is going to be this phenomenal day. And it's going to be this phenomenal day because I am going to overcome what everyone thought that I could not do. I'm going to look them all in their eyes and do what they thought I could not do. And fast forward, and I wind up barely graduating on time, but I did barely having enough credits, just over enough credits that I needed to be able to graduate that day. So I remember walking in graduation day, seeing my name on the list. Great. Had my cap and gown, went down, ready to walk. I remember sitting outside as they're practicing. And then I remember getting to graduation day, and on that day, just sitting outside and being like, what in the world am I doing? I had a weird moment. Everybody has different moments at this moment, but for me, I had this weird realization that for the last 3 years of my life, I had been putting so much pressure on myself to attain this one goal, which was to make sure that I graduated on time. And then I realized that once I actually got there, once I got to that point, I felt even more lost and confused than I did when I was trying to attain that goal. I felt empty. I felt it was just this weird, like, man, like this is not what I thought it would be. Like, this is not what I thought it would be. And it's not that I regretted graduating on time, but it was just like, man, the amount of stock that I put in the opinions of other people and thinking that it would be just this glorious feeling to prove others wrong, it actually left me feeling the opposite way, where I just felt empty. And I think the thing that I learned from this, and I always take away from it, is that pursuing your own goals and interests lead to greater personal satisfaction than pursuing the goals and interests of other people, right? So I was on this goal, on this mission to graduate on time, but that was actually, I wasn't just doing it for me. I was doing it for the sake of others and what others would think of me and the adulation and praise that I would get from others when I achieved the feat. And even when I got there, that wasn't enough. And I think that's when I realized, like I said, pursuing your own goals and interests leads to greater personal satisfaction than pursuing those of others, right? That was a huge insight for me in turning the corner and understanding, like, man, if I'm going to start and go out here, do this life thing, I'm going to choose the me I want to be. I'm going to choose the things I want to choose as opposed to falling for what others want me to pursue or think that my goal should be. So that is super important in understanding before we talk about the how to choose ourselves over who others want us to be. Those two things are some ways that we could start thinking about choosing ourselves over what others want us to be. But being honest and pursuing your own goals are not the only things that you're going to need to start choosing the who you are rather than the who others want you to be, right? You've just opened the door. If all I just did was open your eyes to another way of being, to another option that is possible, you've just opened the door. You've just tapped the potential to understanding what you're going to need to actually walk through that door. And that's what we're going to get into. We're going to talk about that coming up next. We'll be talking about how we can actually start doing just that. Don't move. We'll be right back. This is The Talks. What's up, y'all? My name is Josh, and if you're new here, welcome to the channel. I'm a YouTuber, podcaster, and currently serving my local church as a preteen pastor. I'm a former car salesman, Christian hip-hop artist with over 10 albums released, and an Emmy Award-winning cinematographer. On this channel, we'll have conversations about how to make choices that empower you in your relationships, friendships, spiritual life, and work. My goal is to guide you towards becoming an adult who feels seen, appreciated, and valued for who you uniquely are and what you contribute. Subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with our latest videos where we discuss these topics and more. See you in the next video.
Hey y'all, Bree here. I just remember when we first got engaged, really when we were dating, I said, I put a plate out for you.
And she put a plate out.
How did we navigate that? How we navigate the good things and the bad things. So on our YouTube channel, we just kind of talk about that. Give y'all some insight, not trying to give advice, because we know marriage can be this process that we go through. We just want to invite y'all along in our process. So just subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we hope that we can be just encouragement for y'all, and we hope y'all watch.
Hey, if you think this podcast is helping you and it can help others, help us and give us a thumbs up on the video and subscribe to the channel and even share this with a friend. Thank you so much. All those things help us with the algorithms and all of the things, and we appreciate you and your support and you being here. And if you're not ready to subscribe, that's great too, and want to learn more about this channel, head to the main page and check out the playlist New Here and start there and learn a little bit more about us. Now, we are getting into this next portion here where we're going to start talking about how to start choosing ourselves. What does it look like for us to practically start choosing ourselves over choosing ourselves over what others want us to be? And we're going to get super duper practical with this. I want to get super duper practical with this. So, the first thing I want us to be doing, the first thing that I feel like we can be doing to to do that is learning to say no. Learning to say no. Now think about this. Think about why it is so important to start to learn to say no. And to our foundation for this is going to be boundaries, right? Henry Cloud writes this book on boundaries. If you've not read it, I would encourage you to read it. But it does a great job of defining boundaries. So what are boundaries? The one definition that we've heard that I've referenced before is boundaries is the distance at which I can love you and me at the same time, right? So I want you to think about this. Think about, imagine with me right now that there is a house, and let's say you have a house, and your house is on a piece of property, right? And around that piece of property is a fence, okay? There is a fence, and your house on that property, sitting in the center of that property, and there's a fence all around your house, around the grass, around your property, right? That fence serves as a boundary, okay? So you can choose to open that fence and let people in, or you can choose to close the fence and not let people in, right? But here's the thing. You are not the only house in that neighborhood, right? There are other houses in that neighborhood that have their own fences, right? And they get to dictate who they would like to come in and who they would like not to come in by opening or closing their fence, right? So think about when we say no to something, we are essentially closing our fence to what somebody else may be suggesting, because what is on our property, we have control over. We get to dictate what it is. So when someone asks us or says something to us and says, hey, maybe you should do this, or maybe you can do that, or no, you need to do that because this is what works, or whatever. We have to understand that those are just suggestions. Those are suggestions, and we can choose from those that are wise and we would like to hear from and seek counsel from, to listen to what they have to say and open our fence, if you would. But from those that are not that wise and those that we do not want to be taking their advice, we want to close our fence on them, right? We don't want to let that in. We get to dictate what happens on this property, right? So practice asserting your boundaries by saying no to commitments or requests that don't align with your priorities, right? And here's another thing you got to do. You got to understand that it's okay to prioritize your needs over others' demands, right? You need to get clear on what is important for you, and you need to prioritize that. And I think boundaries and learning how to say no is one thing that will help us to do just that. All right. So that is the first thing that I feel like that we can do, is that. The second thing is this: create a bucket list. Create a bucket list. Now, some of you are probably wondering, what are you talking about, Josh? What is a bucket list? Some of y'all already know what a bucket list is. So they often refer to a bucket list as a list of things that you want to do before you may have to leave this earth. All right? Create a bucket list. And I think this is just a great, simple way to be able to start to clarify some of the things that you want to do. And I actually did this, and I thought that this was actually super helpful. So even going back to the fence analogy with the boundaries, right? So we have a fence around our residence. Now we need to figure out, how do we want our residence to look, right? Do we want to plant flowers? Do we want to paint the house this color? Do we want to have a security system so that when we go on trips, like, we want to be able to set goals for our residents, for our lives as we navigate life. And I think bucket lists are extremely helpful. And here's how I want to actually think through that practically. I want you to think through a couple of different areas when you think through that. Think about, this is what I did, and take with a grain of salt what you feel like may be helpful for you. But I thought about my spiritual life, right? I thought about my family and my relationships. I thought about my work. And then I thought about my rest and my play. I thought about those 4 arenas in my life. And I started to dream and to think about, man, what's something I want to do in that arena of family and relationships? What's a thing that I want to do? What's a place that I want to go? What's a skill that I want to learn? What's something that I want to achieve, right? What's a possession or a skill that I want to acquire, right? Thinking through each one of those arenas, my spiritual life, my family and my relationships, my work and my rest and my plays. And some of those goals look practically like going on a family vacation, or one of the goals that I still haven't done yet, but like going to the Apple campus. I just want to visit the Apple campus just to see what it is like. But I feel like this is just a good exercise to start to get your brain going and seeing the things and prioritizing the things that you actually would like to do, building a vision for what your life could look like. And it's starting to define that, making that clear, making those things clear so that you can start to achieve and work towards those things. You see, a lot of times we allow others to paint a picture for us because we don't know how to paint, right? And I'm trying to teach you how to start painting with these practical things as you think through that. And I feel like as you start to be able to paint your own pictures, you can start to move towards the you want to be, as opposed to the you that others want you to be. All right. So I just want to recap what we talked about today. We talked about why you should prioritize choosing who you are over the who others want you to be. Right. We talked about that. And we talked about how learning to say no and setting personal goals can help you get there. Now, here's a question I want us to think about as we navigate, as we move on. What did you want to be when you grew up? What is that vision? What is that thing that you wanted to actually be when you grew up? Now, I know that thing might have changed, or maybe there's something for you to glean from that thing way, way before, that thing that you're scared to say that you want to actually do this because you don't know how it would actually work. What did you want to be when you grew up? I want you to think about that. This is another talk of Crazy Good Talks. My name is Josh, and we had a great time. I hope you continue to have a great time in processing all of this. This is The Talks.
Thanks for listening to the Crazy Good Talks podcast. You can watch more of this podcast on YouTube. You can also find Josh across all social media.